Welcome to the Dash Mindset Podcast. I'm Sherry Zievenbergen. You were born, you're gonna die, and your adventure is your dash in between. So make the most of it. Unlock your potential in all aspects of your dash by embracing your uniqueness and living in a way that's authentic to you, not by doing more things, but by focusing on the right things. I'm a former corporate leader turned coach who's on my own journey, and I'm passionate about helping you on your journey too. So on the podcast, we'll explore how to live authentically by deciphering who you truly are and what you truly want. Are you ready to take a step toward designing your dash? Someday doesn't actually exist, so let's do it now. Hello there, you are hearing the voice of a 50-year-old. I turned 50 last weekend. And since you're likely listening to this, well, you are definitely listening to this on a different date. You don't know when last weekend was, so I'm going to be more specific. It was January 18th. That was my birthday. It will be again next year. So go ahead and mark that on your calendar. And the reason I want to talk about that, or the reason I'm even telling you that I turned 50, is because I want to talk a little bit about time today. But before I do, I want to share what an incredible birthday weekend I had because it was fantastic. So here's the deal. My husband was going to surprise me. And he did tell me in general what the plan was because he knew that I would otherwise try to plan something. So he said that he'd arranged for me to go out with one of my best friends on Friday night. They had made the reservations. They had coordinated. I had to do nothing, which in itself was fantastic to me. And he said he was going to be the designated driver, which made me laugh because I was likely going to have one drink, maybe two. But I thought, great, he's going to chauffeur us around. That'll be great. And if I fall asleep, he'll carry me to the car. So that'll be great. So super excited about that. And he said on Saturday night, which was my actual birthday, he and I were going to go to a dinner theater, which I was also super excited about. He had gotten the tickets. I didn't have to plan anything. It was going to be fantastic. Friday night comes. I'm excited to go out with my friend. He chauffeurs us. He's the DD. And we walk into the restaurant. And two of my best friends from college are there. One had flown in from Philadelphia. One had flown in from Dallas. And I was totally floored and thinking, thank God I have a good heart condition. Not just that I'm a warm person, but thank God my heart condition is good because I probably would have had a heart attack. So I'm totally floored. I did not see this coming. He and my friend had done such a good job. Everyone had done such a good job of keeping it all hidden. And I'm just having a blast. And we're sitting there eating. And then about an hour later, one of my other best friends from college walks in. She had driven here several hours, what seemed like 72 hours. And it was just so fun. We just had such a fun whirlwind weekend. And I just didn't see it coming. So we were talking a lot about age, right? Because it was my 50th birthday and they had flown in because it's this big milestone. And one of the things that we've always talked about, this group of friends, is the Golden Girls. You know, the Golden Girls from the TV show from the 80s, early 90s. There's Rose, who's Betty White, of course, Blanche, Dorothy, Sophie. Anyway, we always talk about the Golden Girls and we talk about, you know, who would be which character because there's a chance we're all going to live in Florida in a condo together at some point, right? Well, we were thinking we would do that maybe at some point in the far future when we were elderly. But one of my friends informs us while we're out that the Golden Girls were in their 50s on the show. In their 50s. What? So I looked it up because I just feel like this is information people need to know. I feel like you need to know. It needs to be shared. And so just in case you are having a hard time believing it too, that is correct. Their characters were supposedly in their 50s on the show. And then when it ended in the early 90s, they were in their early 60s, very early 60s. Sophie was in her 80s the whole time. So that eases my mind. But really, these people were all living in Florida in a condo together because they were old and they were in their 50s. Anyway, obviously, that leads us to going to Florida this coming weekend. We're all flying into Florida to check out condos because I guess it's coming sooner than we thought. And so I'm recording this before I go. Just kidding. But truly, one thing we did discuss throughout the weekend was the fact that we just couldn't believe we were 50. Regardless of the Golden Girl ages, we could not believe we were 50. We're all turning 50 within 1 year of another, except for one of my friends who's still a youngin'. She's only 45. And so it got me thinking about time. why was it that we all felt like we weren't 50? We were somewhere between the ages of 25 and 40-ish. And why did we all feel like we were just in college? Why did it feel like time had gone so fast? So I did a little bit of investigation, and I had read some articles about this before, but I really wanted to dig in. I mean, now I'm the big 5-0. So I found a few articles that talked about it. And one was an article by Dr. Art Markman. It was in Psychology Today, and it's all about why we have a tendency to feel so much younger than we actually are. And what he noted was that when people hit their 40s, they tend to feel significantly younger than they actually are. And the age they feel they are is called their subjective age, which in general tends to be about 11% younger than they actually are. So apparently I need to up the age I feel a little bit because I've been 25 for a long, long time in my head. So I gotta figure that out. But I actually, he notes that it's generally when people hit their 40s. I know this actually started happening to me at a much earlier point. I know I was in my 30s because I remember one particular day. I can distinctly remember this day. I had been on a recruiting team, and every year I had been on this recruiting team for a few years, and we would go to Iowa State University, and I would recruit every year, and I loved it. And we'd recruit accounting students. And so it did seem that the recruiting time came faster every year. And so we're in the auditorium at work, and there are several new, younger individuals who were joining the recruiting team. And I knew I wasn't one of the new ones, right? But we're standing there, and the gentleman who had always led the group is announcing to everyone, welcome, glad to have you on the recruiting team, yada, yada. And he said, there are a number of new people who are on the recruiting team. And additionally, we have some seasoned employees who are also recruiting. And I looked around, and at that moment I thought, holy crap, I'm seasoned. I've been here a long time now. I am a seasoned employee. And I just remember thinking, oh my gosh, I'm not young anymore, like I am in my head. So you might have one of those moments that you distinctly remember in your head. And, apparently that's normal. So anyway, I'll get into why a little bit more. So we have our age that we feel, which is referred to as our subjective age. And what's particularly interesting in this article is that the gap between our subjective age, the age we feel, and our actual age has gotten larger over time. So there was this study, and in the study, the individuals born before 1935 had the smallest gap between the age they felt, their subjective age, and their actual age. Those born between 1936 and 1951 had a somewhat larger gap, and then those born after 1952 had the largest gap. And that makes sense based on society and culture, right? Because we have social media. People are generally encouraged to continue doing what they were doing when they were young. Those things that used to be considered just for young people, more people are doing now. So there's this gradual tendency for people to feel increasingly younger as they age. And the tendency to feel younger than our age continues throughout our life. So one thing that I had never really considered before, but I found true when I read this, is that generally we kind of think that as we get closer to the end of life, we're going to feel closer to our actual age. However, the data in the study suggests that even people in their 80s and 90s feel much younger than they actually are. And a couple of reasons that were found, and I'm not sure about the correlation and all the statistics, and I know that's something my husband would question, which is good, I appreciate it. But based on what they had figured out, it seems that what they found was that they found that people with more education tend to feel younger. And obviously, this one's a pretty obvious one. People who are in good health tend to feel younger too. They also found that people who had a sense of loneliness, people who were lonely, had a far smaller gap between their subjective age, the age they felt, and their actual age. So that's just more evidence about how important connection is. No matter at what stage we're at in life, either subjectively or in reality, connection is important. So a lot of that, like I said, it seems to be due to culture, which I think makes sense. And so that gap is just continuing to get bigger. Okay, so why do we feel like we were just in college? We've established why we still feel 25. Why did we feel like we were just in college a couple months, maybe a couple of years ago? Because it was far more than that. And why does it feel like time goes faster every year? So I dug into this a little bit. And maybe this is something you can relate to. I'm guessing it is because I feel like I hear this from people all the time. I am confused every year around Christmas time because I think, and not just because Target and everybody, puts up the trees in August now, but because it seems like every year goes faster. And it seems like we just had Christmas and it's Christmas again. And every year I think, okay, Christmas is still on December 25th, right? Do I have that right? How does it seem like it goes faster? I mean, I have it on my calendar. I know when it is. Why does it seem to go faster every year? So here are a couple of reasons why. There's a link between how our brain processes information, how much information our brain processes, and how we perceive time. So the more information we process, the slower time seems to go. And here's an example of that. If you've ever been at a conference that you were actually interested in, so not like a tax conference, unless you're one of those people who's into taxes, you just feel like you're inundated with information. You're bombarded with information that actually interests you and you want to digest. Maybe you're meeting new people and you feel like you've been there for a few weeks. Have you ever had that where it's Friday and you think, oh my gosh, I feel like I've been here a month, and you see someone you've just met like on Monday and you think you've known them for years, right? That's why, because your brain is trying to process all of this information. So the more new experiences we have, the more information we're trying to process, the slower time goes. And the fewer new experiences we have, the faster time goes. And so that's one reason why time seems to go slower for children. So it might seem like when you think back to being a child, summer seemed to last forever. And then as an adult, they seem to last about a minute, right? It's because children are constantly learning new things and they're constantly having new experiences every day. In general, as we age, we have progressively fewer new experiences. Our perception of the world overall just becomes more automatic, and we're more desensitized to our surroundings. And that, that's progressively the case, and time seems to go faster. Our perception of time goes faster. Time is the same no matter what, right? But our perception of time goes faster. And I really like the way Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about this in his book, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. I just finished this book. I highly recommend it. So good. But he talks about the fact that so many people have what we call a midlife crisis and the reason for that. So he talks about how we reach this point in life when we're feeling like, okay, we start questioning, what's all this for? What's the point of all this? And he explains that it happens in our 30s and 40s generally because we reach this point when we've done most of the new things. We've gone to school, we've started our career, we've gotten married, we've had kids, we've bought a house, the whole checklist of things. We've experienced a lot of the new experiences, and those experiences act as distinct markers in our life. So we can clearly remember when those specific things happened because they're distinct, they're markers. And then after all those things, we just start living on autopilot. There's this sense of predictability that we know, okay, well, I know what's going to happen. If this happens, then this is going to happen. And we get into this routine and our days just start blurring together. So it seems that time is flying. It gets faster every year. And we reach a point where we start questioning what we truly want. So if you've ever felt this way, you're not crazy. Or at least you're probably not crazy, at least in this regard. You're just getting older, and we all are. every single day, every minute of every day. We're all getting older. Okay, that leads me to the second reason why it seems that time goes faster. Based on a theory, here's another theory. And this one was developed by philosopher Paul Janet. I know that is terribly wrong. Maybe it's Jeanette because he was French. Anyway, this philosopher from France came up with this theory in 1897. And he talks about how we perceive time by comparing it to our lifespan. So it seems as if time accelerates based on the proportion of life we've lived. So for instance, 1 year for a 5-year-old is 1/5 of that child's life, or 20% of that child's life. Now for me, 1 year as a 50-year-old is 1/50th of my life, or 2% of the life I've lived. So our perception is relative. It goes the same speed no matter what our age. We just perceive it differently. So there are some reasons that hopefully make you feel a little less crazy if you have been experiencing some of these things too. And so I just want to close with some things we can do to slow down our perception of time. We can create new experiences. And that doesn't mean we have to, go plan a trip to Egypt. It doesn't mean we have to change careers or, start living in a camper and traveling the world. We can create small new experiences. Maybe it's trying a new recipe. Maybe it's calling that person maybe you met and you just haven't connected with yet. Maybe you have a weekend getaway. Maybe, here's one. Maybe you get a cat and we have one for you. By the way, if you're interested, we have one. But regardless of that, just try new experiences and just keep having those new experiences, because those are going to prevent you from staying in that routine and just living on autopilot. Do the things you might think you're too old to do, because age is relative. And a lot of times we just think that based upon what other people who were older in the past have done. So if I was living based upon what the Golden Girls seem to be doing in their 50s, I would actually be moving to Florida and living in a condo with my friends, right? So do the things you might think you're too old to do, and don't necessarily do the things that you think you're supposed to be doing at whatever age you're at. And then take small steps, just take small steps toward what you truly want. And remember this, as one of my friends shared on my birthday, which I love, there's no slowing down the train. There's no actually slowing it down. Okay. So enjoy the ride. No matter how long you live, you only live once. So figure out how to share the real you with the world and take steps toward living the life you truly want now. So reach out and we'll figure out how I can help you do that. My contact information is in the show notes, and I will see you next time. Thanks so much for listening to the Dash Mindset Podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe on your favorite podcast player, tell your friends, and leave us a review. Follow me on my social media platforms highlighted in the show notes, and get in touch with me at thedashmindset.com. Share the topics you'd like me to explore in future episodes. Thanks again for listening to the Dash Mindset Podcast. We'll see you next time. Design and differentiate your Dash your way and make today amazing.